Salmon. There isn't a more contagious topic within aquaculture than salmon farming. The biggest success story in aquaculture, at least in the global north, but also full of huge challenges. Pollution, picture salmon feces floating out of a pen, sea lice and all the chemical solutions used to combat this parasite, feed from using wild fish, which we could eat, like anchovies from Chile, and soy from questionable sources in the ex or the former Amazon. But there are also a lot of opportunities to grow a potentially very sustainable source of protein and a source of omega-3 for many people in a way that makes sense. Today we explore the fascinating world of salmon, mostly open pen in the ocean in Norway, but also hybrid flow-through models. We discuss biology and technology, feed and the crazy developments in this very young, mind you, only 50 years old industry. And we also discuss AI and how lasers are shooting down sea lice from salmons underwater. Seriously. Take a deep breath. And another one. Every second breath we take comes from the oceans, and over half of the fish we eat is farmed. That's why we dedicate a series to explore the potential of regeneration underwater. Oceans and other water bodies cover most of our planet and have stored most of the excess heat so far, and at the same time have some of the best opportunities to produce healthy food, mostly protein, store carbon, create materials, fuel, biostimulants, and much, much more. Plus, create a lot of jobs in coastal communities. We have largely ignored the water-based farming, aquaculture, industry in this podcast until now. In these conversations, we explore why aquaculture is so important for the future of our planet. If we get this wrong, we have a serious problem. And what are the risks and challenges with feed, the reliance on soy, pests, yes, there are pests underwater, antibiotics, microplastics, etc. What does it mean when you apply regenerative principles to aquaculture? What can soil-based agriculture learn from aquaculture and vice versa? And what should investors really know about water-based farming and what the potential is of regenerative aquaculture? A series of interviews with the people putting money to work, entrepreneurs and investors in this crucial and often overlooked sector. We're grateful for the support of the Nest Family Office in order to make this series. The Nest is a family office dedicated to building a more resilient food system through supporting natural solutions and innovative technologies that change the way we produce food. You can find out more on the Nest FO, that is thenestfo.com, or in the links below. Welcome to another episode. Today with the CEO of Koen, the leader in the world of sustainable salmon farming. Welcome, Alf Gøran.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And we always start with a personal question, usually around soil, but obviously in this case around salmon. How did you come to spend most of your awake hours, most of your time thinking about sustainable farming, sustainable salmon farming? How did that, let's say, even within salmon farming, there are more easier jobs to do, within aquaculture for sure, and within the larger world of food as well. Like, how did your path led you to this specific spot in time?
Yeah, that's a long story.
I have time.
I tried to keep it as short as possible. It was not intended to end up being a salmon farmer. I come from a fisherman's family, actually. My father and his father again were fishermen, and I went to school and I did educate as a teacher, and that's where I met my current wife, and she's one of the reasons why I spend all my time in salmon farming, because she grew up on the island of Koen. She is the third generation of the farm, and when we hooked up at teacher school, I ended up meeting her father, and her father saw something in me, or at least some kind of potential that he felt, he could hire. So I think it was the third time I met him. He asked me if what my plans were when I was finished studying, and I said,
"That's always a dangerous question in like in an early, say, family-in-law meeting."
Yeah, it's very dangerous. But then again, I guess I asked some correct questions because I think one of the first things he did when I visited her family was show me the farm and what they were doing and why they were doing it. And I've never been to a salmon farm before that moment, and had a lot of probably stupid questions. This was 20 years ago, so yeah, he wanted me to start working in the company, and when I was finished, I did that, and I did go from stacking boxes in the harvest station to feeding the fish to cleaning the nets to I've done everything in the company, and I've been part of it for 20 years now, building it up to where we are today. When I came in, it was an industry that we didn't have as many problems as we have now. But it was, you have to remember, it's a young industry. It's a little bit over 50 years old. Our company has been doing this since 1976, so soon to be 50, so 48 years. I've been CEO for 18 of those 48 years. When I came in, the operation was a lot smaller. We had less pens, less fish, and much easier. I could be a CEO and farm also at the same time. I didn't need to spend the whole day in an office like I normally do now. But so I could participate in the biology and the feeding of the fish and learn a lot from my father-in-law. And luckily for me, he didn't leave the company for me and then left the island. He left the company for me, and then he's still on the island. So he's still someone I can ask when I need to learn more about what we're doing, because I think I'm still, even after 18 years, I'm still learning new things every day, and that's what makes it so interesting. It's a young industry with a lot to learn and a lot of potential, and I believe that it and that's why I wake up at 5 o'clock every morning and go to work. It's because I feel that this can be done in a good way and in a left for the next generation also. But we're not quite there. We have, the bigger the industry gets, the more challenges, not problems, but challenges that we need to overcome.
And take us to when you joined. You said it was a lot smaller and less pens. What was the salmon industry then back then? Because when you joined, it was, I mean, now it's a young industry, but back then it was way younger. Like, how should we imagine?
The technology and everything was completely different. You have to remember, at that point, we were 7 people working in the company. And there was only one guy that was in an office. We had a site manager, but he was out there feeding the fish. And we took the feed and drove it out to the farm and manually put it onto the feeding stations that we were manually controlling, and we were visually feeding based on the activity of the fish on the surface. And at that time, we did a hell of a lot better job making sure the fish got enough feed and not overfed it or anything. Those things were managed quite good back in those days. The feed FCR ratio we had then was impressive for feeding that way.
So just FCR is feed conversion ratio, is how much feed has to go in, how many kilos. You might have seen the infographics on why fish farming is in many cases more interesting than other protein sources because of the lower FCR. But so of course fish farming, there's a constant competition, like what's the best ratio input output, which I think is actually very healthy, because in many other industries, and especially agriculture, we don't do that very much, like how much kilo goes in for the kilo that comes out. And so the FCR was actually really good, you're saying.
Yeah, it was really good, and we have fed fish under 1:1 visually, and that was quite impressive. But then again, when I started, we had those farmers that have been part of this since the beginning. some of the employees then were in their late 50s, and they had been part of the company since the beginning of the company.
They knew,
so had the fish for 30 years and had a lot of experience. So it was impressive to learn from them also the way they did it. Now I'm the one that has the longest time in the company because all of the old timers they are gone, and it's a different job
And you're in an
now than it
office,
was then. Yeah.
Because fast forward now, like what? Yeah, take us to your farm and the pens. Like what should we see or imagine when we see your salmon operation?
Yeah, what you saw back in the days were smaller. The pens were only 60 meters in diameter. Every pen had a machine connected to it, a feeding machine connected to it. So it was the dimensions were a lot smaller. Now it's double the size. So the pens have a diameter of 120 meters. The pens doesn't have any feeding machine connected to it. You have a feed barge that's connected to every pen through a pipeline that goes out from the feed barge. So instead of having 2 tons of feed stored on each pen, you now have 450 tons stored on a feed barge connected to the pens. All the technology, everything involved in just feeding the fish is completely different. You have more things connected inside the pen with the camera systems, with the laser systems, all the data that's transferred back to the operation central that we have that is controlling it. Now a farmer, what we called it back when I started, they're not farmers anymore. They're operators of the equipment. They don't feed the fish. They make sure that the equipment on the farm works and the fish is good.
And did you lose something there with that connection to the fish and the sea? And I mean, we have a similar thing, I think, if that's yes, let's wait. But we have a similar thing in agriculture where you could theoretically, as a farmer, be in the tractor, and even some of them are now remote controlled, operate thousands of hectares without ever touching the soil. Like you park your tractor in the shed and actually never really touch and feel. See your plants. You see your plants from above and through pictures of drones and things. I'm exaggerating a bit, but
yeah.
In farming, I think one of the big issues we lost observational capacity and things. Is that a thing in aquaculture as well?
Yeah, I played farming simulators. I know what's possible. It's one of my important things when we did that. When we did the transfer from feeding on the pen and going to feeding on the barge with the camera system, my whole goal then was to keep the same amount of people on the pens. Don't reduce any numbers there, because the like you said with farming, the connection with the fish and the sea and all the things you can just learn by looking at the surface of a pen. Doing that out there and not on a camera is two different things. So we actually kept some of the old time or the farmers that were good at doing that on the farm and hired new people to sit inside and do the feeding of the fish. And of course that's this is going to happen more and more in salmon farming also. We will have more and more AI and technology that actually in the end, and I think China now did the first one, you can actually remote operate a salmon farm completely. Feed, everything can be done with AI and done remotely, so you don't have to have any people on the farm actually. But that's a future I don't quite... not sustainable, I believe, yet, at least.
And what is your biggest issue with that? Or what do you see as the biggest challenge with, let's say, that path?
It's biology. It is, you can learn a machine so and so much, but the biology is a bit difficult for a machine to learn. The machine can learn to take decision based on certain things, but those who has the fingertip feeling of a fish welfare or how a fish is, that's not possible to learn to a machine. And as long as we are doing farming on or close to land, at least the open net farming that we have are still in not remote spaces there. Everyone is around the island. I can actually see them all, my farms, from my office window, believe it or not. But it's I think it's important to have people still, and even though the technology will come and soon are there, I think quarry will always have people managing the farms out there instead of going fully automatic.
And what has been the driver? I can imagine, but I still would like to know, like, to go the almost extreme mechanization route, like technology route. It's been price, pressure, commoditization. Because compared to before, like what has been the driver, you think, for this young industry to scale up really fast? Because if you look at the numbers, it's striking in 50 years, 50, what has happened, and what continues seems to be happening. What has been driving then that extreme mechanization?
Yeah, I think it is a combination of a lot of things. We are farming more and more remote. The ultimate sites for farming are now further away from populated areas, as it is in other countries also. But in Norway, we see now that the west where we started farming, or Midwest of Norway, where conditions were very good at that moment, have now shifted, and it's more north, and farms are better than the further north you come because of temperature and climate changes and all of those risks that you have.
How does that put you?
So,
because you're based on an island and you're not moving. The island isn't moving. So how does that put you in the future?
no, I think we will be here. We're located north. We're on the Arctic Circle. I don't think the temperature of water will change. It has to change a lot before this will be a bad spot for farming. What might happen here is, of course, a little bit more. You would have farms that will be a bit more exposed, but that can be solved with bigger boats and more safe equipment. But I think other farmers, and especially the bigger companies, there are two things: that the fact that they're more remote, the fact that it's more difficult to get people when it's more remote, and the fact that they're always measured on cost. And right now, like big companies like Movi, they have one of their biggest costs that has increased over the years is the pay, the amount of people involved in this farming. Like I said, we were 7 people when I started farming, and we were farming half. I have to think about 1/3 of the volume we are farming now, and now we're almost 40 people.
That's interesting. You would be 20,
Yeah.
maybe 1 or 2 extra, but not a double. Basically, you became per person less efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. And the bigger you are, you thought you should be more efficient per person, but it hasn't worked that way. We are underlying the same.
So all the technology and all the push for mechanization, you're laughing, but I'm just shocked. That actually doubled your which is great for the island, because you're probably a big employee there, and that's potentially your goal, or one of the goals to
the social sustainability.
But it's an interesting narrative that we've been telling ourselves, that by definition mechanization, technology, and scale, economies of scale, lead to less or lead to more efficient. And you're saying actually in our case, not really.
No, absolutely not. And I think it is a combination of many things. Again, it's because we have the government requires us to do certain things, to report, to certify the companies, so now I remember when I started, my father-in-law said that the most important thing is to be out on the farm. We should have all the people work on the farm, and that's why when I was started as a CEO, I spent half the day outside and half the day inside. And I remember when I hired my first secretary, because there was a lot of work I needed to do on reporting on biomass and lice and all of those things on a monthly and weekly basis. So I hired a secretary, and I told my father-in-law, and he was like, okay, what are you going to do then if you hire a secretary? Are you going to not work anymore? Is that the plan? And we ended up now, I think, out of the 40, 20 of the people are on land and 20 of the people are on the sea. We're at a crossing point now where there's actually more people on land than on sea, and that's not a development my father-in-law would have liked. He has withdrawn from the company because he felt he couldn't keep updated, so he's sold his share to the next generation and stepped out of the board. Which I understand it, because the development have been insane. To keep track of that, you almost have to work in the industry to understand and to be able to keep track. So it hasn't become any more efficient. But you also have to realize that the more we have grown this industry, the more challenges we have, and the more technology we need to put on it to be able to do it in a sustainable way. So
what are those challenges now that just didn't exist 20 or 18 or 20 years ago when you started?
What did you say? What
were the challenges? What are the ones that, let's say, there were always challenges also 20 years ago, but now...
there were when we started, we had when I started, we didn't, the challenge we had that we needed to change the way we were producing or change the feed, change those things. Now we have, because of the industry, the growth of the industry, we have challenges with lice, because the government started taking that down, the parasites. So we have a much lower number now we can have of that before we need to do anything with the fish. Because of the lice, we then have fish welfare problems. We have fish disease problems because the stock of fish is too big some areas.
For anybody that doesn't know what sea lice are, can you give us a one-on-one, a short intro into the challenges of sea lice?
Sea lice is a natural parasite that lives on wild Atlantic salmon that travels the waters. So it is a parasite that has a very short span between each generation. It has a 14 days before it regenerates from an egg to an egg. So it goes from an egg that's floating in the water that will only attach to Atlantic or to salmonite fish. So when it hatches, it becomes a small larvae that then will attach to the nearest host, which is a salmon or a trout. And then it grows from on the salmon's back. It will then grow from being a small larvae to being a big mature sea lice in only 14 days, and then spawn again and perform the new generation. So for every lice that spawn and that gets a host, it increases. So every lice lays like a couple of thousand eggs also.
So an exponential problem.
And that has become a bigger and bigger problem in the industry because it affects the wild salmon back again. It came from the wild salmon, but now the farm salmon is so dense populated in certain areas that it's affecting the wild salmon when it comes in to go up the rivers. So when the wild salmon goes up the river, it kills the lice because it doesn't take fresh water. So that's not one of the reasons why the salmon go up the river, but it's one of the good things when a salmon go up the river. And the farm salmon cannot go up the rivers, of course. Yeah.
It never goes into fresh water. Wow, I didn't know that piece of... Okay, so it's actually a pest or an insect, which in let's say to bring it to the farming, the land farming, soil farming, you would use it in an insecticide in the conventional world. What are farmers in general, and then we'll talk about you, using against sea lice, or how do you weaponize yourself, or how do you?
There's been because the lice has such a low or a short span between each generation, it evolves also faster. So there's been a lot of things we've used and a lot of different medicines and chemicals that have been. We started using one thing, then we overused it, so the lice could develop resistance against it. Then we had another thing, then we had another thing, and now we don't use a lot of chemicals. Some use oral treatment that goes into the feed that makes the lice die on because the salmon pours out a certain chemical. But most of the farmers use a combination of different mechanical treatments. Fresh water, we actually use fresh water as one solution. Hot water, hot seawater, you warm the water up, and that's a bit of a controversial solution. You heat the water up to between 28 and 34 degrees. The salmon can't take that temperature. No, the salmon can take that temperature, but the salmon lice can't take that temperature in, let's say, for example, 30 seconds, it will die.
So you take the salmon out of the pen through something, or how do you do that? Because you
through
cannot heat up the whole
that
pen.
Warms up water.
Wow.
It has like a well of warm water that you just push the salmon through and then back again into the pen.
Wow.
So that's amazing. And then you have
jacuzzi for the salmon.
Yeah. Then you have underwater pressure washer that will actually rinse the lice off the fish with just high pressure water underwater, and that works. And then you have something almost similar to a car wash called skamic, that where there are brushes that will brush the fish as it goes through. And the two methods that we have been using for the last couple of years, or since 2009 actually, is the lumpfish, a local fish that has a quality that he lives on sea lice. So he eats the sea lice off the back of the salmon. And then you have the new invention, the new technology, the lasers that shoots the lice off the fish.
I remember when I was at Aquaspark 12 years ago, there was an idea somewhere and it just sounded like Star Wars. But of course, somebody figured out how to do it. If it's a big enough problem, we'll find a solution.
Yeah,
so go back to the fishes. So you're farming the natural predator as well? Or how do you make sure the natural predator, let's say, is abundant enough and hanging around your pens and in your pens to eat these sea lice?
If you think about the lumpfish, what we did with the lumpfish, because that was actually something we learned from one of the first farmers, my father-in-law and his father. They said that when they were putting out the pens in then they were much more that it wasn't that deep, and they put it out in places where we don't farm anymore. But then they had wild lumpfish swim into the nets when they were like babies, and they grew up with the salmon, and they saw that they were eating the lice. So they kind of said, you should try farming the lumpfish. So what we actually did that. We caught wild lumpfish, took it on land-based facilities, breeded it, and made lumpfish, ranched lumpfish on land. Then put that out in the pens when they were like 15, 20 grams, and they immediately started cleaning the salmon. That was from 2009 to 2019. That was a very good solution on parasite control. But then again, we started to have a problem with the fish health of the lumpfish, and we didn't find any vaccines or anything that could help on that problem. Of course, it was the problem of communicating that it was a tool to fight a parasite that was a problem. Everyone just saw that you grew a lumpfish, you put it out to the pen, and then you killed it with no use. So it wasn't. It was a bit frowned upon at times, and we decided to look at other solutions, and then came the lasers.
So how do the lasers work? Because this sounds, okay, walk us through the laser case.
Then I have to go back to the beginning. First of all, it's a technology that is based out of the technology that the U.S. Army uses for when they are doing jungle combat. They have a laser that shoots the malaria mosquitoes, so the soldiers isn't infected with malaria. They took that technology, turned it upside down, and put it underwater. And it's a Norwegian company called Stingray. And it's all about machine learning, of course. So the first time they came to us and presented the idea, it was like you said, it sounded like a really cool Star Wars thing. And my brothers-in-law that were the one that runs the company, they fell in love with the system. But then again, it only shot 300 shots in a day. So it was like, should we pay this much for something that will only shoot 300 shots a day? One lump sucker would eat 300 lice a day, actually. And that cost 10 NOK, and a laser cost 1.5 million NOK. So it was like, nah, not quite yet.
Not yet.
Come back when you have come a bit further on developing that system. And in 2019, when we started using it, as a pilot on our first site, they were shooting like 30,000 shots a day. So the machine learning the data behind it had started picking up. So we did a pilot on one of our sites, and we immediately saw an effect on using it. So we decided to go all in 2020, and now we have 82 lasers. 2 in each pen at any given time, maybe more. And now they're shooting more than 150,000 shots per laser per day. So wow. In a good week, we could have over 40 million laser pulses on our farms.
And does it affect the salmon? I mean, it recognizes, I'm imagining it recognizes the insect, or in this case, the parasite it wants to shoot. It recognizes that on the skin of the salmon and shoots it off. Does it stress the animals?
It's very difficult for people to understand that it doesn't hurt the animal. And I understand it because it's a laser beam, but it's setting on the laser beam. And it doesn't shoot unless it's 100% sure that it's a lice. And when it shoots for a certain amount of time. And that time has been set to the size of the lice and the thickness and everything. It scans everything. The camera system is amazing. And it shoots just enough to just kill the lice. And you can see the fish, because we get a shot video on each shot, and you can see the fish swimming slowly past the camera, being shot. It doesn't notice anything. It just keeps on swimming, has calmness over it, and it doesn't react at all. When it reacts, it reacts because it sees the light or something. It doesn't react to the actual shot. It's the light in the pen that sometimes scares the salmon. But it is insane. When you know how many salmon we have in a farm that's swimming past the cameras, for the camera to be able to scan the fish and find those 2 millimeters of parasites and shoot it in that time, it's something I did. If you asked me 10 years ago, I would say that's never going to happen. And I still have struggling to believe that it's actually happening.
What does your father-in-law say about the laser show in his old pens?
Yeah, he actually, whenever he has someone visiting, he comes down here to get a tour of the facility, just to hear us tell the story about the lasers and how they work. And because we have the operational central, you can just walk in there and they will show you a picture, and they will show you a live video feed of the lasers shooting and shot videos and all of those things. So you can imagine being part of this industry from the beginning and seeing where it is now. It has to be blow your mind.
It says something about machine learning and imagery recognition, which is not easy underwater in different circumstances, and then being able to shoot a laser on target without hitting the host, let's say. is just fascinating.
Yeah,
Does it bother you? No, sorry, go ahead. I have a question, but go ahead.
No, it's most people have seen, even though we have clean waters in the north of Norway, most people have seen how the water can change and how it can be very, call it dirty or shady at some point because of algae and all of these stuffs. And in a salmon pen, you have salmon with feces and you have feed and you have a lot of factors that disturbs the picture. But it's amazing how machine learning with the whole, if it is unsure, if it's not completely certain, it will send us the pictures. We can go in and verify the picture. And as long as it's a no-go or a go, there's never a like uncertainty. There's only two options for the lasers. It's shoot or don't shoot at all, and that's what makes machine learning works on that stage of a fish feeding or fish production, salmon production. It's the fact that you have a selection between no and yes, and not a lot of various factors that it has to take in. And the camera imaging is of course developing all the time. The first lasers that we had, the 2009 lasers, the hardware on those still works. They're still good, but the difference between 2009 laser and a 2024 laser, camera-wise, is just insane. So you will have to upgrade the hardware on those lasers as we go, because the technology are constantly improving a lot, and machine learning, of course, also improves. But that you can just upgrade the software. The hardware is where you have the most problems, and as I said, we will be able to use them for a long time right now. But everyone wants the latest version of something when it works, especially. Yeah.
And does it, I'm not saying bother you, but we started with biology as well, that let's say the biology approach, in this case the natural predator, worked for quite a while, but then it didn't anymore, and now you're on a full, let's say, full-scale technology solution. Is that, I'm not saying a defeat almost, but like something that you had to go to a technology solution instead of a biology solution?
Yeah, it bothers me just a little bit. You want to, the easiest way to grow a fish or any animal is, of course, as natural as possible, with the natural habitats and all of those things. But then again, it's technology. Yeah. We will never be able to grow this industry if we're going to do it as natural as possible. You need technology. You need some kind of new inventions to how you farm. That's been my perspective on the farming all the time, and that's why we are where we are, because I've been adaptable and we've been willing to test new technology. We have said yes to a lot of things. We're struggling now because we have said yes to a lot of things. So everyone comes to us first with technologies, but we're getting slowly better to saying no.
Because the graveyard, of technologies that didn't work must be enormous as well.
Yeah, it's quite. There's some, yeah, but it is. I don't regret saying yes to any of them, because they are part of getting to where we are now. Actually, it is. Everything has been crucial to get to learn more about salmon farming and to get to the point where we are now. And I still believe we are learning. I still believe we're doing too much experience-based farming and not enough data-driven farming.
What do you mean by that? Because you also started with, we had more people on, let's say, on the sea, on the farm, and we have less now. What do you mean when you say, what data are you missing? What data would you love to have that you don't have now?
Right now, we don't understand all the effects on all the effects in the ocean on the salmon farm. We are not able to connect the dots when it comes to diseases and why we have fish welfare problems, currents, salinity, oxygen, pH. All of those things need to be connected in a way so we could learn from incidents or other things that happens with the fish that we can't explain. We have too many unexplainable, or we can't explain some of the incidents that happens in the farm because we don't have enough data. If we have,
do you think that
data
AI could help with that and big data?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. AI is one of the solutions on that problem, and that's why we're working with several people now with AI on data and big data and trying to connect the dots between everything.
And what about the land-based or fully closed RAS systems? Like, you're farming in the sea. If you would be able to control everything on the land, would that be better, worse? Or if we don't understand all the different variables well enough, is that also a tricky one to dive into?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, but we were the first open net farm that invested in a land-based farm. So we actually have a land-based project that we're working on. And the reason why I'm doing it is because I believe there is what we're doing on sea now is it hasn't reached a maximum point, but we're getting close to a maximum point. So we need to find other ways of growing this industry. And open net farming is come to a point where it's big enough. Land-based farms are one solution. I struggle a little bit with the RAS system because it's more chemistry than biology, meaning that the water quality is.
What does RAS stand for? I mentioned it, but I forgot.
It stands for
recirculating, I think. Or
recirculated aquaculture system.
Yeah. So constant,
it's reused water. So 99% of the water is kind of reused. So you only need a hose like this to produce salmon on land because you're reusing the water so much. The system we are planning to putting on land is a flow through system where we actually pump up the water we need. We actually reuse, but we reuse only 50% of the water. So you have to pump a lot of water. So that's not good. But in the north of Norway, power and sustainable power sources are available. So, and we're also going to produce a lot of power ourselves with the land-based system that we're putting out there. But I believe that a combination of land-based closed nets or closed at sea and open nets and offshore is part of the future of salmon farming, especially in Norway. We have the water quality, we have the water temperature. We need to exploit some of those things in producing more salmon.
And what are the limitations now on the open pens? You're saying closed pens, does it mean closed, floating in the water? How should I imagine a closed pen? Yeah. It's not a net.
Yeah, you should imagine it like you say. It's as a closed pen or a closed tank floating in water, or like a pen underwater with just plastic, or most of them are made of plastic. Then, but yeah, around totally 100% closed. So you don't have escapes. You don't have a parasite infection or anything. You can
no sea lice.
Yeah, no sea lice, because the closed pens on sea, they will get the water from underneath and pump it up into the pen, because the parasite, the lice, doesn't go under 9 meters because of pressure. The eggs and everything doesn't go under 9 meters. It floats in the surface of the water. That's also why the land-based farms will get their water from 80 meters or 25 meters or similar.
And then what happens with the water full of feces, etc., is that Or what happens now with closed pens? Is it pumped outside? Is it filtered at all? What happens with the out? Let's
No,
say
it
the in
is.
comes from deep.
It's filtered as it is, and it's what we do. We filter it 90%. You take out all the feces from the water that you then put back into the sea. So it's all about trying to clean the water that you put out. So it's it's system. Then you utilize the feces that you
What do
get
you do
out,
with
because
that?
you understand the feces from the fish has the technology behind feed is so insane that the nutritions are still in a feces that comes from the salmon. So it's like the cow, of course. You can reuse that
The
into
manure.
biofuel or even fertilizer for the agriculture or other things. That one of the things you get by producing salmon or from the feces of the salmon is phosphorus, which is a scarce raw material in the world. So that has a huge potential in utilizing the feces from the salmon. But it's going to be a lot of feces. That's the problem. We produce 8,000, or the land-based farm that we're going to do is 8,000 tons of salmon, and that means that you will have almost 8,000 tons of feces that you need to utilize in some way.
And so let's talk about feed, which I think is next to the parasites, etc., the big lever of change and the big challenge in fish farming in general. Unsustainable sources of feed, or FCR ratio, feed conversion, which we discussed before. A lot of it, I think, especially at the beginning, now it changed a lot, of aquaculture was fed with wild fish, which didn't really help with the sustainability ratio, to say the least. Then a lot got replaced with other protein sources, because the salmon needs to eat protein to a certain extent. What are you using? What have you seen? Also there, I'm imagining as you said, the feed technology and feed uses has been insane in the last 50 years. What have you seen there, and what are you up to now, or what are you using now?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. The feed part of this was one of the first things I saw as something we needed to change. And in the salmon industry, there are three big players when it comes to feed. They are controlling everything when it comes to Atlantic salmon and feed. So we had a good cooperation with one of them, and we went to them and say that we want to change our recipe. We want to make our own recipe. And they looked at us and were like, "Why? We make the cheapest, best one possible for you guys. Why do you want to change it?" And we said, "Yeah, we want to change it to something better. If it costs more, then that's okay with us." And then they were like, "Oh yeah, of course. We even have a sustainable director in the back here that we haven't used at all."
Somewhere in the corner,
maybe you
he's
can
very
use him.
sad. Yeah.
He was actually
Let's call Marcel. Let's
he
get him
was
in.
sitting
Yeah.
in a corner in an office, just dusting down and not doing anything. And of course we got him engaged. And like you said, we were selling to the U.S. market. They had when I was traveling around meeting the customers, meeting different buyers over there, everyone had some pointers they came with, and the feed was one of the things where I saw the farmers have not changed anything. They let the feed industry just make it more and more how to say, more and more not sustainable, more and more cheaper and better for the farmers, so they could produce cheaper. And omega-3 levels were going down, using more vegetable oils and stuff like that. They were at one point, I think it wasn't good for the industry. So we told them we want the feed that we want to build back to omega-3 levels and the right balance of omega-3. as a wild salmon for the
Because that's
farm
one of the
salmon.
reasons we eat fish. It's, I mean, apart from tasty and part of your diet,
Yeah,
if not, etc. But
absolutely. But now
omega
it's
3/6 ratio is
yeah,
very
it's
fundamental and went
50%
completely
of
wrong in land-based animal protein as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
It is 50% of what it was when it comes to salmon. So it
Wow.
has completely
Because of feed.
gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we took that and we challenged them. We said to them, we need a feed that is more sustainable. We want a natural colorant on the feed. That's one point. And that was possible with something called Panafur that it contains the same ingredients as a synthetic, but it's made out of a yeasted bacteria. So it's the same colorant that the fish would get naturally from shrimps or similar
Because
crustaceans.
the pinky's color is not natural in most farmed salmon, I'm imagining. No.
Synthetic.
Enjoy tonight, wherever you're going to, after listening to this, if you dare to order, good luck. Sorry, keep going. Yeah.
I don't know. More and more farmers are now looking to one of our feed solutions. It was quite funny when I started doing this. People were laughing at me and saying, "You are not. This is never going to work. You're never going to get more paid for a salmon, and you're never going to succeed in increasing costs and doing things with the feed." But it's 10 years now since we really innovated the feed. We have a 10-year anniversary actually this year. And our feed now is, a lot of farmers are asking to buy some of the same ingredients that we are. They want that included in their feed. Like we
Are you still with the same company?
Yeah.
And the same sustainability guy?
Same. And he has now 2 assistants. So believe it or not, and I'm actually next week. I'm going on a trip with them to Scotland to look at their feed production there. But yeah, the feed we have done. That's where we have innovated the most. I feel that the lasers and everything that's cool and that's very innovative.
Cool gimmicks.
But the feed is where we are miles ahead of everyone else when it comes to feed.
So what are the big differences except for the colorant?
The natural colorant, the cleaning of PCB and dioxins in the fish meal and fish oil that's included, the use of North Atlantic fish meal and fish oil, and only cutoffs from byproducts that were not for human consumptions, the use of European soy, the use of algae meal, that has been able to increase the omega-3 levels to where we are now with wild salmon. We're actually a little bit over wild salmon also, and the right balance. And then the krill that we use has a double effect on both omega-3 and colorant. And now we're looking into adding insect meal and reducing the fish meal that we use. We are a net producer of protein. 0.48 to 1 is the fish in, fish out ratio in our feed. So we produce twice as much protein as we use in the feed to produce protein.
I don't remember the numbers from my time at Aquaspark, but I remember the super specifically, but that's really, really low. It's really high, but the 0.4 is very, very, very impressive.
It's
and
extreme.
Has that been recognized by the market, like on the buying side, or on the people buying from you? Because people said you're crazy for paying more for your feed and increasing your cost, but if you can absorb that, then it's okay. But you're never going to get people to pay more for different. You were meeting buyers that said feed is an issue, and you started 10 years ago to address that. Has that resulted in better sales or different sales, or being able to access markets that others can't because they're not miles ahead as you are?
Yeah, it's been absolutely. It's been a long way to get to where we are, but absolutely, I would say that the relationship we have built with some of our customers regarding communication on what we're doing and why we're doing it has really improved and really given us the price premium that we needed to keep on developing what we're doing right now. So the answer to that is absolutely, and we're still just scratching the surface on the potential of what's possible to do there yet, and it's all about communication. We're trying to. We're not saying that we're better than any other farmers, because all farmers are doing a hell of a job, but I'm saying that it's possible to do even better, and that's what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to be in the front of sustainable farming and leading the way and taking the right choices for everyone. That's why we haven't patented our feed. It's openly, it can be bought by anyone else through Biomar if they want to, because it will benefit us also if more people buy more of those raw material that we use. It will reduce the price on some of the raw material. We have no goal. I've been learned or my teacher when I came into this industry was my father-in-law and his father again. They built the industry by learning from each other. There's no secrets in the industry. Everyone trying to have the same goals. We're trying to raise a sustainable salmon and trying to build an industry for the future.
And before we wrap up with some final questions, how has been the effect on the health of the salmon, this feed journey you've been on? Has there been an effect? One, of course, the omega-3, but like the salmon itself, have you seen differences in them?
I would absolutely say that. Then again, it's biology. There's so many things that has an effect on a fish in the sea, and so many things you can't control. But I would say yes to that answer. And just because I have seen the development since we started 10 years ago, I've seen the problems we had with melanin spots, that's like infamous spots on the filleting that the fish gets from the sea and stuff like that. With our feed, it has improved significantly, and lower mortality with lower density, all of those things. But it's a combination of a lot of things. Yeah.
As always. And
yeah.
What would you tell people that are listening, but also I like to ask this question. Let's say we're in a theater in Oslo, in the financial heart of the salmon industry. I don't know if that's Oslo, but a lot of people managing wealth, managing investments, their own money, maybe other people's money. And they're learning a lot tonight because they learn a lot on the salmon industry. They might knew already something, but for sure they learned a lot. But if there's one thing you want to one seed you want to plant in their mind that they remember the next day when they're back at work, when they're back at the laptop or back on their farm, what on the financial world, what do you think should people absolutely know about aquaculture, about sustainable aquaculture, and about what's possible and what's not possible? What is a seed you would like people to remember if they have listened to this for an hour or for an evening?
No, that was not the easiest question I've gotten. I think the most important things to remember is that the industry is young. Even though you have seen the development we have had the last 10 years, which are insane, we still have a long way to go before we can call ourselves an industry that's there for the future. I think
next generation.
I think people have to understand that the development isn't finished. They have to understand that we're not doing this because we want to kill salmon or stuff like that. We're trying our best to figure out how can we farm salmon in the best possible way, and I think they will see that more and more people will move in the right direction. Be patient. It is the this is the best way of feeding a growing population. We're only using 3% of the water in the world to grow food. So we need to figure out how to do this even better for the future. And I personally invest in a lot of salmon farms that are on the stock exchange because I believe they have a unlocked potential still.
And that's actually a perfect bridge to the next question. If you would be in charge of a large investment fund, I don't know how much you're investing, but I'm guessing it's not, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing it's not a billion, let's say, euros or more. But if you had a fund that size and you had to put it to work, could be aquaculture, could be beyond that as well. But what would you prioritize? What would you focus on? Is it the technology side? Is it genetics? I'm not saying GMO, but is it hybrid systems like you talked before? Is it the feed things? What would you, if you had a significant pot of money to put to work investing, could be super long term, doesn't have to be 6 years or something, but what would you focus on if you had that kind of resources to invest?
Again, a very difficult question, because I have so many things that I see a potential in, but I would maybe focus on genetics, investing more money into that, because right now we're behind on the genetic side of it. We don't have enough raw production to keep on growing the industry. And then of course, I would invest in land-based farming, because land-based farming, especially flow-through systems, will succeed and will grow exponentially going into the future now. So those things, if I were to just look at what would benefit me and my farm and my things, but it's
and any moonshots, any extreme things.
I would buy the laser company. That they have a future for sure. But don't tell Stingray that I would do that. But
you just mentioned it on a podcast, but I'm glad they listen to this one.
Yeah,
and
so it's
And in feed, would you do, if you would be able to fix something or invest in something, potentially fix it, would you place some bets there as well? Long-term bets, I mean, on the insect side or seaweed or algae, what are things that you find interesting, but you just don't have the investment side?
Plenty of new things that are coming that I would find very interesting for sure. Not the bigger feed companies, because they're just the drivers of new things. They're everyone has to go through them, but the new technology, before they enter into as a raw material, there's a lot of development being done, and believe me, we have been part of a lot of interesting tracks that are still ongoing on new ingredients, new protein sources, new stuff, one-celled things, and like you said, insect meal, and even algae is now for colorant. So that's very interesting. That's why I say that if I got $1 billion to invest, it wouldn't be enough. I would make it smaller investments in a lot of things instead of bigger investments in fewer things. Because
you build a portfolio, which is probably very healthy. And as a final one, because I want to be respectful of your time, if you had a magic wand and you could change one thing with a click of a button overnight, what would you change overnight? Which could be anything, literally remove sea lice from this planet. It could be fix feed for or something way more like global consciousness. We've had all of those answers in the last 8 years. What would you do if you had the magic power to change one thing overnight?
My initial thought would be the lice, of course, because of all the challenges and things that comes with it. But then again, you never know how that will affect the whole biology.
Probably something else comes back.
Would something else just pop up then? So use the magic wand on that one would be preferable, but at the same time a little bit skeptic. So Yeah, maybe. No, I don't know. It's that one is hard. Maybe the. No, I'm actually. If I didn't use it on that one, I would have to use it on some kind of magical way. Get rid of all mortality in the salmon. But that again, if we can't kill the salmon and feed people with it, that's a problem also. It's a magic wand. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's a difficult question.
Fair enough. I want to thank you so much for your time today and for, of course, the work you do and waking up every day at 5 to change and to work in an industry with enormous potential, short history, but pretty impressive history and a lot of challenges. And you are fronting them with great knowledge and also with, I can see, with a lot of humor, which I think is needed. So thank you so much for coming on here and for sharing your journey with us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. For the show notes and links we discussed in this episode, check out our website, investinginregenerativeagriculture.com/posts. If you like this episode, why not share it with a friend or give us a rating on Apple Podcasts? That really helps. Thanks again and see you next time.